We're back again, segment 3 of 3 with Jennifer Williams with Firefly Insights, and we're talking all things employee ownership for Canadian controlled private corporations, essentially, and giving options for transitioning, maybe not fully exiting, but partial exits. And I think an area we've certainly talked about getting the structure set up, looking at tax advantages. But one thing that's really important is where these businesses fit in our communities, right?
Mm.
So let's talk about the community benefits of employee ownership.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me start by sharing a couple of statistics about how employee ownership can really have an impact on communities. So during the pandemic, there was a lot of research that was done about what happened to business and what happened in the economy. And one of the things that was found was that employee-owned companies were 3 to 4 times more likely to retain staff and make pay cuts. And so if you think about that from a community perspective, if you're not losing jobs, if you don't have a higher unemployment rate, you're going to have a more vibrant community.
Mhm.
We also know that during volatile economic times, employee-owned companies will withstand the test of time in a better than non-employee-owned companies. So, you know, we're currently recording in February of 2025. I
Mhm.
think everyone could determine that these are volatile times that we're
Mhm.
currently living in, no
Yeah.
matter what segment of the economy you currently occupy on a day-to-day
Or
basis.
what your overall views are. It's certain there's
Correct.
uncertainty. Yeah.
There's just uncertainty. Yeah. The tariffs and all of those things just create a lot of uncertainty. And so employee-owned companies do better during times of uncertainty. And if you think about it, if you're a company of 100 people and all 100 of those people are owners and they have a vested interest in keeping that business afloat, they're going to show up differently on a day-to-day basis than if you own a business of 100 employees and you have to figure out how to put salaries in their bank accounts every 2 weeks, and you're the only one thinking about that, it changes the outcome, right? To me, it's just very simple in terms of perspective.
Yes, for sure. When you break it all down, it's the vested interest. So that kind of speaks to changes need to be made, even whether they're short term or longer term. And if everyone is part of the organization, they can bring varying solutions to the table, and B, they can also accept the changes a little easier because of that vested interest,
Yeah.
right? As
If you're,
opposed to saying, I've just been told that
yeah,
this is what's going to happen. No, I've
yeah.
had a say in how we're going to get through this.
And so it's also commonly the case. Like if you think about it, if you're selling shares or if you're a shareholder in an employee-owned business, you are going to understand the finances of that company better than if you're an employee. One of the things we encourage business owners to do is to share financial information. You don't have to share everything, but at least share high-level financial information with your employees. And we make sure that employees understand that information and what that means. And so if you understand that because of tariffs, your goods have just gotten 25% more expensive and your margin on those goods was 25%, you know what that means as an
Hmm.
employee,
Hmm.
right? So there's none of this like, oh, the boss is saying we have to cut this and that and the other thing, but it's rather a like, okay, wow, this is a real problem that we're all facing.
Hmm.
And because I understand the financials of the company and because I benefit from the profits of the company, I can think about how do I impact that change? How do I contribute to that? And I've heard so many stories of there was a company that I heard the story of that their business was losing money. They're a multi-location restaurant, and they kept losing spoons because people would, the spoons would
Hmm.
just end up in the garbage. And so because they were employee owned, the employees went on, this hunt for like, where are all the spoons going? Thousands and thousands of dollars a year in spoons. I think it was like $72,000 a year or something, right? So the employees were like, okay, we're going to figure out where all these spoons are going. So they figured it out. And they ended up magnetizing their garbage bins so that the spoons would get stuck on the garbage bins and then they would be able to keep
Oh,
them from going
wow.
to the garbage. And
Yeah.
they saved the company thousands and thousands of dollars, right? Well, if you're an employee who doesn't care about the profits of the company, you don't care if the company's spending more money on spoons.
No.
It doesn't matter to you. So these are the kinds of things that come with why during volatile times, employee-owned companies are more resilient and will keep um, businesses are more likely to stay in business. They're more likely to keep people employed. And that's what we need during volatile times, right? We need that kind of nimble
Solidarity.
solidarity, like
Mhm.
all of those things to be able to get through that.
Yeah. And when we think about let's job security, instead of, I'm not going to say pro or not pro union, but if you think about
Mhm.
it's not a them us kind of thing, right? From a job stability standpoint, you're there, you're on the ground day to day, and it seems to me, again, opinion, observation, less adversarial if you
Yeah,
are an employee or you own part of the company, right?
yeah,
Um, Shifting a little bit to the role of government, because we haven't, I mean, aside from, legislation, tax legislation that we spoke about being tax smart and some of
mhm.
those benefits, larger lifetime capital gains exemption. What other roles do you see government playing in policies to support this type of transition? Because there are so many business owners that need to be thinking about what's next for them, for their company, for their employees. So even if they don't, there's a thing, right? Business owners maybe don't actually want to physically exit, but they need a strategy to have continuity because something can happen. Part
Awesome.
of an exit could be an unintentional through a health crisis or disability or even becoming an angel, right? So what role do you think, bring that all back, what role do you think local governments could play in policies to help encourage these types of transitions that can, from everything we've talked about, really benefit the local communities?
Yeah. So I think the Canadian government does a good job in providing what's been referred to as, I think it's guardrails. Like the legislation has guardrails. It says like these are the things that you must do. But there's also a lot of flexibility. And what I really appreciate about that is that in the US it's quite prescribed and very, the boxes are quite prescribed that you need to fit into. And that can make it more challenging for some companies to fit into. Whereas I think in Canada we have enough flexibility that supports employee ownership in lots of different ways, that it allows us to design and to meet the needs of the company and the culture so that it can succeed. That said, there are loads of like development, like all regions have their own economic development agencies.
Mhm.
Those places, I think, need to be really talking to business owners about this because for sure this is a topic of conversation amongst business owners in
Mhm.
all economic regions in Canada.
Mhm.
And having this as a resource for like, here's the information on how this could work, I think is really important because if you're doing, in-person events or you're doing webinars and you're not providing information to people about how to keep your business locally owned by engaging your employees, then I think you're missing an opportunity in your region.
Yeah, so that's a particular way that you would suggest that. Yeah, I'm thinking to like organizations like our Ottawa Board of Trade and that sort of thing. So I feel like I might need to be knocking on a few doors there, trying to get some word out.
Yeah.
Um, it's early days with the employee ownership trust. Um,
Mm.
and maybe it's hard to predict, but maybe maybe it's more like hopeful rather than long-term trend. Like what do you hope to see long term as we do we do see more businesses transition to an employee-owned strategy, whether it's an employee-owned trust or an employee-owned share plan or some combination of the above. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we know from the UK is that when employee ownership trust came into legislation in the first year, I think there were 4 or 7 companies that took on an employee ownership trust. I went to the EO Employee Ownership Conference in November last year, and there were 1,000 companies that had adopted employee ownership in just that year, I think. Like it was, the growth has been phenomenal, right? So
Mm, hmm.
what started off very slow turned into very much a hockey stick curve where you have your early adopters and then you have this like big growth in companies. And it's now, I think the stat is something like 8 to 10% of companies that are transitioning in the UK are choosing employee ownership.
How
So
many?
8 to 10%,
8 to 10%. Okay, that's a pretty big number, really.
big numbers. Yeah. And so for Canada, we just the first Canadian Employee Ownership Trust was announced this month. So we have our first. It exists.
Official.
That's very exciting. And we know there are more in the works that will be announced this year, right? Clients that I'm working with and other people are working on. So that's fantastic.
Hmm.
And my hope is that we see that same kind of growth in the curve that the UK did. Because I think there are so many people who don't have a succession plan because they don't know what to do.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to sell to a third party. I don't want to sell to a competitor. I don't want to close it down. My kids aren't interested and they feel stuck. And I think employee ownership offers people a chance to become unstuck.
Hmm.
And so I think as this becomes more known and people know that this exists as an option, I anticipate that we'll see that kind of future here as well.
Hmm. Hmm. And from this community-based perspective, um, those business owners who are in the smaller actual communities, feeling stuck and then selling out. That sounds even like I'm using certain terminology that sounds terrible, but they sell to private equity or they sell to their competitor, and then what happens is sort of that um, maximizing of the financial side, the financial impacts means potentially like that particular location in that
Right.
smaller community is moved.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
back to sort of the resilience and building communities when it's employee owned,
Yeah.
then it's probably going to stay in this smaller communities, or at least those employees are have some voting rights on what happens
Right.
next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So
Mhm.
really important aspect when we talk about so to your point you made in a previous segment about, yeah, this is the Cash Rich Exit podcast, and certainly it's about creating intentional exits. And yeah, like I do want to see business owners succeed and be proud of what they've grown and built, but part of that is being able to um, leave a legacy behind that's much more than just the dollars and cents on the personal net worth sheet, which is
Yeah.
all great, but can feel even better if
Yeah.
you've been able to enhance the community
Yeah.
around you.
Yeah. It's a win-win if you can
Hmm.
both leave
Hmm.
your business in the community in the hands of your employees and financially benefit from the sale of your company. Like that's the goal. This isn't you're not giving the company to your employees. There's still a financial transaction
Hmm.
and you're getting value for your company, but you're also getting to create that community legacy and that opportunity for employees to drive your legacy forward.
Yeah. So, one last piece of fun Frank advice, Jennifer.
One last piece of fun, frank advice. Um, I would, I'll go back to my first one, which is that if you don't have a plan and you're a business owner and you are considering exiting within 10 years or less, please talk to people. Talk to your advisors, talk to folks like me, talk to M&A people. Just start to get a sense of what happens to businesses when they're looking to transition. Because I can tell you one thing that makes me most sad is when a business that I love closes, right?
Mhm.
This like something in your community that you've shopped at for years and you really, you know the owners and then they close and you're like, but why? Right? Like was there not an alternative option? So and I think alternative options exist only when you have a plan for them. So
Right,
planner. Yeah.
right. That's excellent. That's excellent advice. Thanks for being here, Jennifer, to share your insight from Firefly Insights on employee ownership trusts and employee ownership plans. Looking forward to collaborating with you as I'm chatting this up as an option for more and more CEO, founder, business owners in our community.
My pleasure, Colleen. Thanks for the work that you do to share this information with your community. It's really important.
Excellent. Okay, so Jennifer, tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Sure. So I have a really common name, Jennifer Williams. And if you just type that into LinkedIn, you might have a hard time finding me. So Jennifer Williams, Firefly Insights on LinkedIn will probably get you to find me, or employee ownership. Jennifer Williams LinkedIn will get you to find me. Our website is fireflyinsights.ca, and you can get a hold of us there.